Hi again, everybody. This is Mike Parker welcoming you to our inaugural show of Talkin Beavers for 2015, presented by Wilson Motors from our Flat-Tailed Brewing Studios. And indeed, we're talking Beavers when the media has been talking Beavers. They haven't been too optimistic. The media poll has the Beavers picked last in the Pac-12 North. Part of the reason, look who the Beavers are trying to replace. Guys on to the National Football League. Coming up on this first show, we'll talk about the prospects for the Beavers in 2015, who they're trying to replace, who's going to step up. We're stepping up next. Our first show. Thanks for joining us on Talkin Beavers. And Reser Stadium will be the place to be Friday at 5 o'clock with the Beavers kicking off the season against Weber State. We come to you from the Flat-Tailed Brewing Studios. Mike Parker, honored to be joined. It's great to have you all with us tonight by Oregon State alumna Lindsey Schnell with Sports Illustrated and former Beaver great Slade Norris. And we have a lot to get to on tonight's show. And let's just jump right in. We saw that graphic, the Beavers picked last. I'm not sure what the expectations are, what your expectations are. The media doesn't think much of the Beavers' chances in the North. What would be a good season, Lindsey, in your opinion, for this first year in the Gary Anderson era?
If they figure out a way to get bowl eligible, I'm voting Gary Anderson for mayor of Corvallis.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a rough year. I think that a lot of times it is in transition. I think we're looking at 4 to 6 wins, but I also think that they could surprise people because this defensive coordinator, Kalani Sitake, I think very highly of him, and he knows how to slow down all these high-octane offenses.
So, Slade, Lindsey thinks bowl eligibility would put Gary into a class of perhaps National Coach of the Year consideration with his group. What are your thoughts about that?
You know, I completely agree. It's going to be hard because you have these athletes who have been playing this pro-style offense and this 4-3 defense, and now, we were talking earlier, you have that same recipe, you're trying to make a whole new meal. And so it's a tough schedule this year, too. We have some tough road games. We got 5 ranked opponents we're going through, and we're playing Michigan, who also is a little bit down, but they got Harbaugh in there now, 110,000 people. If we can come out of this and we can get a 6-win season and get bowl eligible, I'll be really happy.
So, Lindsey, if you talk about Kalani Sitake, one of the first things you talk about on Talkin Beavers in 2015, you're thinking about defense. And for the Beavers to have the kind of season that they all believe they can have and get to a bowl and win a lot of football games, who for you might be an emerging star on this defense that they need this year?
Well, Kyle Pecco has to be a star for them this season, all season long. And then defensively, after talking to some people down on campus, I think that Devin Chappelle, and Mike, you got to help me with this name, okay? Titus Failaunga?
Failaunga, very good. He's had a great camp, yes.
Okay. We're going to practice all of the names on the roster and hopefully get it right at some point.
Well, Slade, what about that? You were such a great defender and a sack master. Defense, to me, will indeed be a key. What about for you in terms of a guy that's jumped out at you as a chance to be a star in this new team this year?
I want to watch and see what Bright does this year. He's a freshman, you know, coming in, a redshirt freshman. He's a speedy guy. He's got great athleticism. I love our defensive line up front. I think we can hold up those double teams. And if we can do that, that gives him a chance to run all over the field and make a lot of plays. So welcome to the defense, welcome to the team. Show me what you can do this year.
Interesting. Now, we're going to hear more later on the show about what the 3-4 is all about. But in the 3-4, a young man named Joshua James has become what is being called a hybrid defensive end linebacker. He's played both at Oregon State, so he's been well prepared. Slade, what are your thoughts about Joshua as a hybrid guy?
I love it. He's a bigger guy. He's, 260 pounds. He's an athlete. His only weakness before the season was we don't know if he can defend the pass because with that new position, he's used to just rushing the pass every time. Well, now he has to drop back and do some of that. And speaking personally, I played defensive end for Oregon State. I never cared about the pass defense until all of a sudden I get in the NFL, and it's a huge change. Yeah. It took a long time for me. From what it sounds like, him and his backup, David Henry, have really worked hard this offseason, studied film together, because David was great with the pass coverage responsibilities, and he was great with the rushing. So they've worked together, and I'm excited to see what he puts together this next season.
Well, let's hear from number 48 himself, Joshua James, in this hybrid role, what he thinks about what they're asking him to do in this Beaver defense.
think it's an honor. I mean, it's an important position on the field. Coaches trust me with it, so I mean, I'm gonna just take it and just do the best I can. Help this team win.
How do you feel that you've adjusted to this new defense and as a new hybrid position player?
I think I adjusted well. I'm still learning the position, kind of. Still got to go over coverages and stuff like that. You know, wide receiver routes and different things like that. But I think overall, it's just, you know, playing football and just reading your keys and stuff like that. It's not too bad. I think I'm doing pretty good.
Well, Slade, you bounced around in your career from a position standpoint. How much will Joshua's past experience help him make the transition to this role?
Since he has played a little linebacker before this, that'll help tremendously. Knowing what's happening behind you, even I went from safety to linebacker, defensive end, and so knowing everything that's going on behind you helps you so much. You know the position you need to be on that field in order to run that defense, and so I think that can only benefit him going forward.
Remember a couple years ago when, wasn't it Cyril Nolan-Lewis switched to linebacker for a short period of time, and I remember then Trent Bray said, you have to have hybrid guys in this day and age defensively because they need awareness of what's going on all around them because offenses move so quickly. So if you can bring in a player that's played a few positions and can be a hybrid person, that's huge.
Well, it will bear a lot of scrutiny Friday to see how the Beavers deal with the new scheme, how they deal with speed and space. Weber State will present some interesting challenges, maybe a little bit more the following week in Ann Arbor, as Slade has alluded to. And certainly on the other side, there's been a lot of conversation about the quarterback position at Oregon State, and we will talk more about that coming up on Talkin Beavers. But coming up next, Gary Anderson himself and breaking down Gary's system. Thanks for joining us on our first show of the new year.
Well, when you have an opportunity to hire somebody like Gary Anderson, what a great hire. I mean, he's a heck of a football coach.
His teams always play hard, they play tough, they play clean.
When I think of a Gary Anderson football team, you're going to have a team that's very disciplined, very tough, very physical. He's a guy that brings a level of blue-collar toughness to his team. I think the learning curve will be quick.
Well, he just made the move to Wisconsin the year before, so he went through that process, and so now he's doing it again. So I'm sure he learned a lot of lessons there.
Does things the right way. He's a guy that's going to build the program the way they want it built.
I think he's got a great reputation in the coaching circles. I think he's a very hard worker. I think he's a respectable man.
They've got a great coach there at Oregon State, and he'll do well. He'll figure it out. He always does.
We hired Coach Anderson, and the rest was history. You know, a guy came here so passionate, so honest, so real to us that you couldn't do nothing but buy in.
He's just so intense and so focused, and just everything he says, I believe it.
You can see it in his eyes, you know, he's just very focused. He's a very focused person, you know, you can see it.
We bought in from day one, and I think that's why we're seeing the changes we did and seeing the growth we did as a program, and we're excited that football season's right around the corner.
Well, indeed, high praise from his peers, his current players, and the record shows why that would be the case. You see what he did at Utah State in building. By that third year, he got him over the hump. They'd only had 6 wins in their previous years prior to Gary's arrival. And then the great record that speaks for itself at the University of Wisconsin. So, indeed, Gary Anderson getting a lot of plaudits. That was from Pac-12 Media Day with his peers talking about what Gary's doing. And I'm just wondering, you know, your reaction to what some of the things you just heard from his peers and his current players.
Well, I think about something that Kyle Pecco and I talked about earlier this week, and I said, what's like the thing that Anderson has instilled mostly? And he said, we better be aggressive, we better be physical. And that's come from the whole staff then. I do want to point out that he did not win at Wisconsin with his own guys. Those were with Brett Bielema's guys. I think that there were a lot of pieces at Wisconsin to win with. This is going to be a much different, much harder task for him. We're going to learn a lot about him, but his record at Utah State speaks for itself.
And he built the program. You know, he took a program that was moribund, it had nothing going on, and he built it into an 11-2 season, made him one of the hottest commodities in the country, gets the job at Wisconsin. And we saw, I think, Slade, great coaching acumen to go to Wisconsin, and even though he's brought a spread offense with Dave Baldwin and wants to run that kind of offense here, he had pieces in place at Wisconsin and showed that, hey, he can coach up a lot of different styles.
I completely agree. What he's done, his track record is is amazing. He's turned programs around. I mean, Utah State was a nobody and brought him back his last year. I think they were ranked 16th, as you said, the 11-2 record. And he knows how to run the ball. I mean, look at Melvin Gordon last year, who actually I have on my fantasy team this year, so we better continue that. But I loved what Jordan said, how he said, you know, everything he says, I believe in. He came in to this team, and gaining trust immediately with the players is huge at this point. His intensity, talking to Larry Scott back when I was down there, he was saying how much fun practice is, because you've got coaches going back and forth at each other in a fun way, and they didn't have that last year, so they say. And so I'm excited to see how that team responds. You know, how intense, how much fun are they going to have in the field this year?
We've used the word energy so much about Oregon State in general, and I think that that's the perfect word for Gary Anderson. He brings awesome energy to campus, into the meeting rooms, to practice, and people are fired up. People are excited for a change. The players, like you said, have completely bought in. I mean, I think that they will surprise someone this year.
You know, Najee Patrick, who recently went on scholarship, a great story that Gary shared with all of us in Beaver Nation at OSUBeavers.com. Najee said one word to describe Gary Anderson. He said physical. And so I think that's a great word to describe the head coach.
He might actually tackle a player to demonstrate something.
You know, he showed, as we talked about with Slade a little bit, at Wisconsin, the ability to be very physical in the run game. And you can see 67% rushing plays. Last year, the Beavers were at 44.4, as the graphic shows us. And I find that to be interesting in that, you know, for all of the talk about being wide open and in a spread offense and spreading things out at speed, I still think that the Beavers are going to run the football a lot and be a physical power team a lot.
Any team that spreads the field, that is able to do that, runs the ball first. That's part of why the Ducks have been so successful the last few years. Gary Anderson knows that. They are going to have, the running backs have to get something done, and early.
Now, Slade, in your opinion, though, it is still a new system. Even if you are behind an experienced offensive line and talented running backs, in your view, what's realistic to expect out of the new offensive scheme, in your opinion?
You know, it all depends on what we get out of the quarterbacks. I think we'll be able to run the ball well this year. With our O-line coming back, they've been playing together now for a year. We're good in that category.
Healthy.
Isaac's healthy. That's going to be huge. And so, I mean, what's a quarterback's best friend? You know, it's not his equipment manager deflating the balls. It's the running game. And so
it's not the left tackle?
If we can get that started and get that going, I think this offense has a chance to do some great things. We have a lot of talent.
You know, it takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback to run the football, but I really believe that what really is the quarterback's best friend, the offense's best friend, is a great defense. And we're going to talk, in fact, coming up next, we're going to talk about the Beaver defense in the new era under Gary Anderson. Later in the show, Angie Machado, publisher of BeaverBlitz.com, has a very special feature. And in fact, Angie, what is coming up later?
Thanks, Mike. Coming up on Talking Beavers, I'm going to give you my 4 impact freshmen this upcoming year on Talking Beavers.
Well, from the spring game, there's Seth Collins throwing one down the middle. Nice toss. And also out of the spring game, Marcus McMaryion, Collins, McMaryion. We'll talk more about the quarterback situation a little bit later. But as we talked about, the quarterback's best friend may be a good running game, but I think more than anything else, it's a great defense.
Okay, I still think it's the left tackle, but I'll get on board with this defense thing.
Yeah, let's talk some defense right now. And in your view, Lindsay, we've talked a little bit about who may be leaders, but you know, what's got to happen on defense? And there's some other people or pieces you think that just absolutely have to come together for the Beavers to win football games?
I asked Kalani Sitake that this week, you know, who needs to emerge for you guys? And he said, everyone on the depth chart would be good. You know, and he pointed out, too, that they have been really intense with this group, really physical in fall camp, started in spring ball and then into fall camp, because you have to be that way with a young team. But, I mean, I hope you guys aren't sick of hearing me talk about Kyle Pecco yet, because I'm going to talk about him all season, okay? We've been waiting for this kid to get eligible for years, literally. He hasn't played since 2012. He's got to do a lot for them early. And it doesn't necessarily have to be statistically. He doesn't need to lead in every statistical category, but he has to be one of the most disruptive defensive linemen in the Pac-12, and he needs to attract enough attention that other guys can make plays. And Slade is nodding because he knows I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, that nose tackle if he requires a double team. I mean, how big could that be if Peko commands that on almost every snap?
It's huge. With a 3-4 defense, in order to be successful, you have to free up your linebackers to run around and make those plays. And it's going to be hard for Kyle to lead any kind of category because he's going to be getting double teams every single play.
And that's okay.
Which is fine. I don't care if he has a tackle at all the whole entire season. As long as he's holding up that line and clogging up the middle, that's all we need from him.
Now, we're going to hear a little bit more here in a moment about the 3-4 specifically. Any other leaders, individuals, even if Kalani stopped short of naming one, Slade, do you have somebody else that's got to step up? You've already mentioned Titus Failaunga, but Slade, anybody else in your mind?
On the field and off the field, Larry Scott.
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
He did it last year. The commish. And he had some great plays last year, but then there were some times when he played a little soft. You know, this year he has to set the tone for the entire defense from the beginning. Everybody is looking up to him, like I said, on and off the field. We really need him to play well.
One thing that I think gets lost when we talk about the defense, because they lost so many guys from last year, so many starters, they bring back a lot of experience, though. A lot of the guys who were second on the depth chart got a lot of playing time, so it's not completely new for them.
You know, we've talked about some individuals. You've mentioned the 3-4. I know Kalani's grown a little bit weary of talking about, is it a 3-4? Is it a 3-3-5? What exactly is it?
It's going to be a little bit of everything.
Kalani says it's the best 11 guys on the field. He said it'll add up to 11, and however they line up and scheme it. However, it is a new base defense. And in our first edition this year of the standard TV and appliance, setting the standard since 1947, it's the Burton Breakdown with former Oregon State assistant coach Nigel Burton.
I love Nigel Burton.
Let's talk about some of the things that we'll see differently out of the Oregon State defense this year, having shifted from a 4-3 defense to a 3-4 defense. Now, when we talk about the 3-4 defense, what we're talking about is having 3 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers, as opposed to a more traditional defense that may have 4 defensive linemen and 3 linebackers. Now, the reason you do that is because having the extra linebacker on the field and removing a D lineman allows for flexibility. That linebacker is trained to rush the passer, but also has the ability to drop into coverage and is trained to do so, whereas most defensive linemen aren't really trained to do that. So what that allows is flexibility of what you want to do. Now, versus Weber State, which will probably be very pass happy, if they can get pressure with those 3 down linemen, Oregon State can actually drop 8 guys in the coverage to hold against the pass. Some other things that they'll be able to do is simply just roll one of their linebackers up to the line of scrimmage and rush 4 and basically become a traditional 4-3 defense. But the beauty of the 3-4 is not only can they come from one side, but because they're a mirror defense, they can simply do the same thing from the other direction and confuse the quarterback. They can bring both linebackers and play zone behind it. The possibilities are absolutely endless. Now, the one thing about this defense is you have to have linebackers that are stout enough, athletic enough, and smart enough to run all this stuff. And for Beaver fans, I'm sure hoping they do.
Well, thank you, Nigel. Burton's Breakdown every week coming up. That's good stuff there, Slade. And the one thing that, he talked about a lot of different moving parts in it, a lot of different looks. We've touched a lot on Kyle Peko, and we will be talking about him a lot, I believe, this year. But not only will he command a double team, but there will be different stunts and looks in that front to free him up to make big plays.
There will be. And he mentioned the position of it's called the stud linebacker, and that's the guy that moves up to the line of scrimmage. And I love that stud linebacker. You got to have a stud there. We have Joshua James. His ability to rush the passer off the edge there is going to be huge for us. And then with the 3-4, as he showed, you can drop it down from the left, drop it down from the right. There's so many rotations you can do and so many different combinations of linebackers coming in. It's really hard for an offensive line to tell where that blitz is coming from because somebody's coming.
You know, Lindsay, I talked to Justin Strong, one of the starting safeties, about the complexity, the apparent complexity, but he says Kalani Sitake has actually made it simpler this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that they are going to confuse offenses, but the players are going to absolutely know what's going on, and they don't want to be predictable. I think that that's something a lot of people didn't like about Oregon State. A lot of fans were frustrated by it, both offensively and defensively. Pretty predictable. They're not going to be like that. First, I want to say, Slade, that it was funny earlier this week, Kalani, someone said, I've never heard stud linebacker, and and Kalani shrugged his shoulders and said, well, I didn't come up with that name. I would have called it something like a cupcake linebacker, which I think we can all agree would not strike fear into anyone's heart. One thing that Kalani said, too, that stuck out to me was, you know, coaching is done Monday through Thursday. On Saturday, on game day, it is about being an encourager, and it's about making adjustments. If you're coaching on Saturday, you screwed up. You didn't do it right. Your kids need to know what's going on. Now, they're going to make mistakes, of course. They're 18 to 22-year-olds, and this is new to them. The biggest thing, it has to be a disruptive mistake. I think that's going to be the key word this year.
And there's some 18-year-olds and indeed true freshmen, and coming up, we'll learn a little bit more about from Angie, who will be the biggest freshman in terms of true impact. That's coming up. But next, we want to get into what everybody's been talking about, the quarterback battle. Who will take the first snap? How important is the answer to that question? And we're really excited about a new feature, the CSN Fan Zone. It's a fan rewards program. To get started, go to csnnw.com/fanzone. You can earn points for different types of actions and engagements with CSN online content. And prizes include iTunes gift cards and CSN merchandise. That's the CSN Fan Zone. Over the years, we have become accustomed to pro-style and prolific offenses run by great Oregon State quarterbacks. We're moving into a new era, but as we take a look back before jumping a little bit ahead, let's see some of those great players in the history of the Oregon State program. From 1997 through 2014, the pro-style offense has been a fixture in Corvallis, and it has produced 5 of the top 6 career passing leaders in Oregon State history during that time.
Empty backfield, down the hash marks, nice catch.
It started with Jonathan Smith in 1998, who completed his career as the school's all-time leading passer with 9,680 yards, and his collegiate career highlighted by the 2001 Fiesta Bowl win over Notre Dame. His successor, Derek Anderson, soon leaped into the #1 spot after finishing his 4-year career with over 11,000 yards.
Anderson, quick drop back, throws, Newsom the catch, first down Beavers.
From 2005 through 09, Coach Riley's main threats under center were Matt Moore and Sean Canfield, and they currently sit as number 5 and number 6 on Oregon State's career passing yards list.
Play action, Mannion on the rollout. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown.
Everyone was passed recently by graduated quarterback Sean Mannion, who became the Pac-12's career passing leader his senior season with over 13,000 career passing yards. But what about 2015? New head coach Gary Anderson plans to bring his version of the spread offense to Corvallis. He will have at this point 3 unproven quarterbacks at his disposal, true freshman Seth Collins and redshirt freshman quarterbacks Nick Mitchell and Marcus McMarrion. And by all accounts, they are eager and ready to go.
Part of Seth's game is his ability to be able to be athletic and make those special plays, and puts him at higher risk, especially when he decides to helicopter his way into the end zone. That makes me a little bit nervous, but it shows his competitive nature.
The 2015 Oregon State Beavers and their spread-style offense will be drastically different than what we've seen in the previous 2 decades in Corvallis, but it should be exciting to watch. Well, it's time for the Les Schwab Quick Fix, and there's probably no better way than to talk about the quarterback position and going forward and taking a look back at the Pac-12 career passing yard leaders. Les Schwab has been doing the right thing since 1952. The Pac-12's been around since 1916, and look at the guy at the top in the history of passing yardage in this great league, and the 100th anniversary actually going back to 1915. Oregon State's own Sean Mannion. But now in the new era, 2 quarterbacks we've been told by Gary Anderson and offensive coordinator Dave Baldwin, they're both going to play against Weber State, Seth Collins and Marcus McMarrion. Slade, you were part of a team at Oregon State, some great teams that featured at times 2 different quarterbacks, sometimes due to injury, maybe sometimes a little bit related to performance. So you've had some experience with it. How does it work? How did it work in your recollection of it, and what's your anticipation of how it might work here?
We were lucky with Lyle Moivau and Sean Canfield. The guys were so different. We all knew that Sean, as a pure quarterback, had a higher ceiling, but Lyle brought so much fun and intensity to the huddle that he had just that it factor.
Guys wanted to play hard for Lyle Moivau.
They did. I mean, think back with the Washington game when he lays out Grayson Gunham and fires the entire team up.
Beautiful.
We were very lucky to have two guys who we both felt comfortable. They weren't going through fall camp. It's whoever makes the least amount of mistakes. It's whoever just wins the job. And so with two guys that you feel comfortable with, we don't care. You just go on and know the job's going to get done no matter who's in there.
Do you think that it can divide a locker room?
It depends on the attitude of the guys. If both guys are in it to win it, they're helping each other, they're friends on and off the field, I think it's fine. If the two guys start not liking each other, I think it can.
Now, Lindsay, we saw in the video, and fans have seen it, that incredible athletic ability of Seth Collins. So just in terms of the sheer dynamism that Seth Collins brings, what about him? There's some stuff you can't teach quite so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the quarterback that was brought in to run this offense, and I think that it's going to be like, hey, you're young, you're going to take some shots, but by the time you're a junior or senior, we're going to have it all figured out. I don't think that it's that big of a deal that we don't know who's starting right now, and it's okay to have both of them play. That doesn't mean that something's going to be set the rest of the season. Now, if you keep doing this, there's, you know, that old saying, if you got two quarterbacks, you got no quarterback. And I do think that in 2012, when Oregon State had a legitimate shot to go to the Rose Bowl, it screwed some stuff up. I absolutely believe if Sean Mannion had started at Stanford, they would have won that game.
Cody threw it pretty well that day, just the ball slipped out of his hand, but that's ancient history.
Mike,
it's ancient history
we got
now.
to talk about this really fast. Okay, I just want to say that I was never a running back, obviously, but even I know that you do not run the ball with the ball held out like this.
It's painful to even think about that moment. Let's talk. Passionate. Let's talk about the other one. We talked about Seth, Marcus McMaryion Slade, and you know, there's a sense that I get in talking to Marcus himself and to coaches and teammates. This is a steady kid. He may not have some of the same gifts, but there's a steadying influence here.
I think he can throw the ball a bit better. I mean, I think he's a little more reliable back there, but it's kind of like when I was going through. Not as much of the fact of with Sean and Lyle, but I think Seth has that it factor. He gets out there, he gets things done. He's jumping over guys, flipping over guys. He gets that team fired up, and so both guys bring a lot of good attributes to the field.
I think that with McMaryion, like you bring up a great point, Mike. He's steady. He's a little less emotional, and that can be good and bad, right? Like we were talking about with Moivau versus Canfield. But right now, when you have such a young group and you have a new offense, you might need that steadying influence. And maybe it's that he just plays a lot. You know, it's possible that both of them play a lot the first few games.
And especially going into somewhere like Michigan.
Absolutely, and that's what Dave Baldwin has said. It's very important to get both of these quarterbacks a lot of reps against Weber State in preparation for 112,000 plus in the Big House. In terms of the two quarterbacks playing, everybody, well, who's going to start? Is the answer to that question, Lindsay, important? Who takes the first snap?
Well, I don't think that it's important for us. I do think it's interesting that today Marcus McMaryion told reporters they're not even aware who's going to start. No, I don't think it's that big of a deal because it's all about your play calling, right? And you're going to put people in positions to run the correct play. So maybe they start Seth Collins and it works well and they want to stay with him. Maybe they then move to Marcus. I mean, I don't think it's that big a deal.
A lot of times coaches make their first 5-10 plays. They script it all out at the beginning of the game. And so Seth runs some better, Marcus runs some better. That's all that really matters, I think, this week. That's who they choose.
Well, either way, we know that they are both going to play, and so that takes some of the mystery out of it. They're both going to play, and they're going to play against Weber State. Coming up later, we're going to learn a little bit more about Jay Hill's team. Jay very close with head coach Gary Anderson at Oregon State. But coming up next, we're going to find out what Angie Machado has brewing in terms of top impact freshmen. So with apologies to Monty Python's Flying Circus, what you got, Angie? What you got?
Thanks, Mike. Up next on Talking Beavers, I'm back with my top 4 impact freshmen this year on Talkin Beavers.
Other than the coaches, have there been specific players that have given you advice, like, okay, this is what you need to expect when you first run or reset or go on the field for the first time?
Not really like not really like advice like what I need to do, but like a lot of support, like and like, you know what I mean, just like motivation, like from Storm and some older guys. So yeah, in terms of that, yeah.
Freshman quarterback Seth Collins, part of one of the youngest, in fact, the 9th youngest roster in the country, as you can see. 51 freshmen, only 13 seniors. It makes the Beavers the youngest team in the Pac-12 conference. And in light of that, we think it's very important to bring Angie in at this point. Angie Machado, the publisher of BeaverBlitz.com, with the top 4 impact freshmen for 2015 in this youthful Oregon State squad. What do you got,
And
Angie?
we're going true freshmen.
True
We
freshmen.
spent last year talking about all these guys on the recruiting trail, and it's time to talk true freshmen, because there's a lot of redshirt guys we could talk about, but let's talk about some true freshmen that we talked about last year. You have any guesses on who number 4 is going to be, Mike?
Well, I know number 4 is the quarterback, Seth Collins, so I think he's maybe higher on the list.
Yeah,
What
we're
do
not
you
going
got?
to go with him.
Okay.
We are actually going to go with Xavier Crawford, a freshman cornerback out of Pittsburgh, California. Xavier, technically, he's a true freshman, but he's signed with the 2014 class. He gray-shirted. He's had the opportunity to spend spring and fall camp with the team. Really athletic, really fast.
Even so, a true freshman playing in this conference, it's a tough challenge.
It is a tough challenge, but he's shown really great skills during the scrimmages and practice, and I think the coaches actually feel that he's ready for that challenge.
Okay, well, who's next?
Let's go with a running back. I love this guy, Deltron Sands out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida, one of the top programs in the whole entire country. Deltron's a guy that has had heaps of praise put on him. We've had Storm Bars Woods tell us just how quick of a learner he is. Coach Lockett says that he's ready to go. He's a typical Oregon State runner. He's fast, he's small.
It's interesting to me that he's playing, first of all, given the fact that there is Bars Woods and Chris Brown and Damian Haskins and Ryan Nall in the mix. He must be pretty good.
He's very good, and he's picked things up so quickly, and that's what the staff really likes about him.
Okay, who's number 2?
Number 2, we have to go with the speedster, Paul Lucas out of Chandler High School. This was a late addition to what we talked about on the recruiting trail. He was a surprise signee, signed that last minute. He was a 4-star recruit. He's a 4.3 40 guy, and he is fast. He's a guy you want to get into space, get him the ball on a fly sweep, get him the ball, as a return guy. He will make a difference out there.
Well, we're down to who is number 1 among these 2 talented freshmen. Who do you have for?
Noah Togiai has really impressed me with his skills out at tight end, but I have to go with the quarterback just because of the impact of that position. Seth Collins, no matter whether he starts or not, he's that guy that can just make huge plays.
And one of Seth's jobs will be, and Marcus, whoever plays quarterback, is to get the ball to somebody like Paul Lucas or to find Deltron Sands.
Exactly.
At handing it off or as a receiver. That's a very interesting list, Angie. We look forward to seeing how that will play out beginning Friday.
It's almost, it's a little frightening, I think, for the coaches that you have this many true freshmen that could be actually making a play. So.
Well, it all begins Friday, and it begins at Reser Stadium against Weber State, a 5 o'clock kickoff, and it's #Beaver Salute. It's been one of the more popular promotions in the history of Oregon State athletics, and you can see what they've done with the logo. What a great look to salute both active and retired personnel of our U.S. Armed Forces, and our own Slade Norris knows how to get geared up for this game. Slade at the OSU Beaver store getting ready for the #Beaver Salute.
I'm here at the OSU Beaver Store campus location, and we're kicking off the football season, Weber State, September 4th. OSU has chosen to salute the military. As you can see from my fashionable camo outfit here, that's what we're doing over at the Beaver Store. So we've got Old Benny, who doesn't love him, and guys, we got a ton of stuff for you. If you want to get a workout before the game, we got the shorts. The game's a 5 o'clock game. It's going to be a little colder out there. You can camo up with this nice little sweatshirt. Hats, we got it covered. Military style, OSU, America. We're gonna walk over, ladies, don't worry, we didn't forget about you. We got a nice ladies section with anything you guys need to beaver up for the game. I'm gonna start with showing you guys the red, white, and blue. Nice little long sleeve right here, it'll keep you warm during the game. We'll walk you over here next. Who doesn't like a nice little slim fitting camo? Everybody likes that. Go Beavers. Ending off here, guys, the 3 for $25 sale. It's a really popular sale over here. These tees, you gotta get them. Go America, go Beavers, OSU Beaver Store, fans start here.
First of all, Jay Hill, I recruited Jay Hill out of the same junior college, Rick's Junior College I played at. And I love Jay as a player. And when he told me he wanted to get into the coaching profession after he spent a little bit of time in the NFL, he decided that he wanted to coach, and I thought it was a great move for him. He has a tremendous family, and I've watched them grow and very, very quickly. And for Jay to make the decision to be a head football coach, he called me. That was a tough decision for him to leave Utah and jump out and go be a head coach. And I think no question about it in my mind, he made the right decision.
Well, you can tell that there is mutual respect, and more than just respect, great affection in that Coach Anderson recruited Jay to play at Utah. Then Jay coached under Gary when Gary was a D coordinator with the Utes. We can see that Coach Hill struggled a little bit in that first season, going 2-10. But like Dave Baldwin has talked about, the offensive coordinator for the Beavers, about his head coach and boss, Gary Anderson, there's core principles and values at work that will work for Jay at Weber State. How much of a jump they make this year, I don't know, but we're talking about Jay and Gary being disciples of the great Ron McBride. They do football the right way, Slade, and I expect them to be a lot better this year.
I do, and the biggest thing is their 2 wins came at the end of the season. They got some momentum going they can carry over into this year, and they played a lot of young guys, and they still have a lot of young guys playing this year. So it's real similar to the situation we're in. A lot of new starters, a lot of young guys playing, and I'm excited to see the team that they field this year.
Yeah, Oregon State players have said the same thing. Lots of returners, and it is probably worth pointing out that the Big Sky is pretty good in FCS.
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. We have some painful, you talked about painful memories earlier. There's some other ones that just shudder the soul of collective Beaver Nation here in a moment. But we saw that this team for Weber State has been picked 11th out of the 13-team league, but they do have out of the chute a mobile quarterback in Jadrian Clark, a dual threat. So, Lindsay, I think it gives the Beavers a chance to kind of take on a guy that can make plays.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This is, in the past, probably if you were an Oregon State fan, you were getting a little nervous anytime a mobile quarterback came to town. I think it's different now. I think that Kalani knows how to stop those type of quarterbacks. He's proven that, at Utah, so they're going to be more amped. And here's the biggest thing. I think that sometimes under Riley, they were guilty of not really just putting their foot down on someone's throat. And Oregon State should do that this week, and they need to do that to set the tone, and I think that they will.
Weber State has played 2 other schools in the Pac-12 and have lost big in both. Arizona State last year to Utah 70-7 a couple of years ago. And Gary Anderson, we can see, as an FBS head coach, has not lost to an FCS team. So Slade, and we've alluded to it, again, it brings up pain. But in thinking about Big Sky's stumbles, is there any chance, in your view, that the Beavers could stumble this time around?
I just don't see it. With our team this year, there may be some missed assignments, but I think the passion they're going to play with this year, and even if they go through and they mess up, they go through the wrong gap, they're going to come through so disruptive. Still, something's going to happen. One more thing I wanted to add on to yours is, yes, Kalani knows how to stop the spread offense, the mobile quarterback, but also they faced that the entire fall camp. So they've seen that the whole time. They've gotten that look. One more guy they need to look out for, though, is that Cameron Livingston, their wide receiver from Weber State. He's a great athlete, and we got to make sure we lock him down.
Well, there are plenty of playmakers, and there's talent all over college football at all levels these days. And so coming up, we're going to have, in a sense, prophetic game balls. We have seers. That's a lot of pressure. Seers who are going to get game balls not only for the Weber State game, but maybe all season long. The Wilson Motors game balls coming up next on Talkin Beavers. The Beavers hosting Weber State, finally getting it going. They get to play somebody else and not just playing one another. 5 o'clock, Research Stadium on Friday. And to get you ready, we've got a lot of Beaver-specific programming right here on CSN NW. As you can see, this show, of course, Talkin Beavers on Wednesday. Beavers Inside the Huddle with head coach Gary Anderson. Hashtag Beavers Football with our own Slade Norris, amongst others. And, of course, CSN Game Day Saturday morning. And by then, we will have had one game in the books by the time Game Day rolls this Saturday. And it's time for Wilson Motors game balls. And I don't know if you want to predict a game ball, Lindsay and Slade, for this particular game or what your methodology used to hand out a game ball before a game's been played. What do you have for us, Lynn?
Well, first of all, I want to say that during the commercial break, I was awarded the game ball over Slade, just so everyone knows, and you should be paying attention
You
online.
need to keep me off camera right now.
It's true. It's true.
I'm thinking of game ball in terms of who needs to be someone that the Beavers can count on all year, and I'm taking Storm Woods, their running back. You know, he's got to stay healthy, and if he can stay healthy, he's got to go for at least 1,000. He's on every preseason watch list. He needs to live up to that.
Yeah, he rushed for 940 yards as a freshman, a redshirt freshman, and 13 touchdowns. So I think Storm Bars Woods is ready for a tremendous season. Now, Slade, what about for you in terms of a pre-game ball?
You know, I don't know if it's out of jealousy or what, but I got to go with the stud linebacker position, Joshua James. You know, we're going to face Weber State. I don't see them being able to run the ball on us. They're going to air it out. And if they do, that gives him the opportunity to do what he does best, go get that quarterback. And I think you're going to see him all over the field, coming from each side, everywhere, in the backfield all day long. If he can do that and carry that on throughout this season, I'm really excited to see what this defense develops into.
Mike, who should be getting our game ball tonight? I'll tell you who. My favorite football coach wife, Courtney Brennan. She's turning 29 again tonight. Coach Brennan's wife. Love her. Wanted to give her a birthday shout out.
Okay, well, happy 29th, Courtney. We're very happy for you, and stay on that number. It's a good one. So happy birthday to Courtney. We are very excited about getting the season going. Victor Bolden told me earlier today, said, I'm tired of talking, let's play. Do you feel the same way, Slade?
Always.
Yeah.
Football season should be all season.
Yeah, I would like to watch them tackle someone besides each other, and I'm sure they are ready for that too.
You know, and a key is they have been tackling a lot, though.
Yes, huge.
Slade, how big is that?
Oh, it's huge. To have that going into the game, to get your angles right and everything, I love seeing that.
That's part of why they lost to Eastern Washington and Sacramento State in the years past, because they did not tackle.
Well, we look forward to a lot of tackling in space. We look forward to a lot of excitement on the new offense, the 3-4 defense. It's all finally upon us, and it begins on Friday, 5 o'clock against Weber State. Remember, #Beavers football with Sweet Slade Norris. That'll be
I think he
coming
wants to
up.
be called Studley Slade
Yeah,
Norris.
he covets that stud linebacker. So Studley Slade on #Beavers football, 8:30 on Thursday. Inside the Huddle just before that with Gary